Madam Speaker, the issue by Senator Mtata about compensation is very serious. It is only today, when it has come into public domain, that Professor PLO Lumumba has sued Honorable Nixon Korir, PS Lands, because they have embezzled 184 families of money meant for compensation for areas where the standard gauge rail line passed through. Nixon Korir with some other senior officers at the Ministry of Lands. Parliament, we must wake up to these things. Lumumba should not be doing our work. We should by now have removed Nixon Korir from office to pave way for comprehensive investigations. How do you investigate the PS when he's in control of all the data that the courts will require to nail him? Mr. Speaker, I demand that Nixon Korir steps down as a PS and await the outcome of the investigations. Mr. Speaker.
What's your point of order, Senator Eddy?
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Order, Senator Cherargei, please.
Madam Speaker, 101. Standing order 101. The majority whip who oversights the government has brought to the attention of this house very serious things happening in the government where he's the whip.
Senator Eddy, what's your point of order under which standing
That's the point of order, Madam Speaker. I've said point of order 105, 101, Madam Speaker. And the issue that he has brought to us, Madam Speaker, is that there is a PS that he has alleged as embezzled some funds that must resign, and he has used the word demand, which I respect because he's the whip who has demanded that. It's unanswered, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, under 101, isn't it in order?
Senator Eddy, can you cite the standing order under which you are acting? No. Oh, I didn't hear that.
Madam Speaker said 101.
Hear that.
I was just saving you the reading.
Yeah.
Under 101, Madam Speaker, can we discuss the conduct of an individual without a substantive motion? Can the whip be directed to give us a substantive motion? Because, Madam Speaker, this is a very serious issue. Where investment is involved, may you direct the whip to bring a substantive motion on the said PS so that we can be able to converse, and doesn't demand it just out of the blues. The demand is obsolete if it doesn't have any power given by this House, Madam Speaker.
Senator,
can you give us the substantive motion?
Senator Khalwale, you have had the point of order. Would you please withdraw your demands around the PS and bring before this House the matter in the proper manner so that it can be discussed?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll do as directed. I will be able to handle it in the proper manner. And
yes.
Mr. Speaker, for purposes of this
first withdraw the demand that...
yes, I withdraw the demand.
Thank you.
Until guided by a resolution of the House. Madam Speaker, allow me to use this opportunity. There was a time when I was your age, Senator for Migori, and the nominated Senator Gloria, who keeps on screaming from the back there. There was a time we were your age. And we learned from the senior politicians in this House to be good legislators.
Senator Khalwale, please don't use unparliamentary language in respect of colleagues.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if I may go to my contribution. On the issue of raised by Senator Onyonka, Madam Speaker, about human organ trafficking, I want to call upon the chairman of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Board, Professor Stanley Khainga, who was my classmate from high school all the way through medical school. Professor Kainga, the eyes of the country are on you. You should have, accompanied by the PS Health, accompanied by CS Health, accompanied by CS Internal Security, all should have gone to Eldoret to go and close down this thing you're calling a hospital. How can it be, as I saw some so-called CEO of that hospital, I saw on TV, struggling to say that they are a world-class center of doing kidney transplants. And as she said so, she spoke in broken English. A world-class center cannot employ people who are illiterate. They should not play around with the children of the poor. I want to see a child of a minister going to donate, a child of a PS going to donate a kidney for somebody who is unknown to them. Mr. Speaker, in medical ethics, you donate organs within families. And before that donation is done, you do everything up to and including DNA. We cannot just allow people to be exploited. What a pity. 300,000 shillings in exchange of an organ that will turn your life completely, in exchange of conmanship by people who will get millions of shillings from that organ. It must stop. We must protect the poor. And if it's not,
Senator Khalwale, you can finalize in 30 seconds. In 30 seconds.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I finalize by addressing the Minister of Health. He is not going to intimidate anybody. The Minister of Health is on record bragging that although he is not a doctor, he knows more than a doctor. Duale, please. Please, you are a small boy. I saw you found me in this parliament.
Senator Khalwale, please withdraw those words. Don't use unparliamentary language.
Okay, I withdraw the small boy part, but caution him again and again to stop playing with doctors. He should go and reflect what became of his classmates with whom they were in high school. How was he performing in class compared to his classmates who went to medical school? He owes them some degree of respect. Being appointed as a minister does not make you supernaturally clever. In fact, there are Kenyans who would be making this government performing better if they were the ones in those ministerial dockets. Mahova.
Senator Mutinda.
Madam Speaker, I do rise to make comments on Senator Cherargei's statement in regards to the 10% tariff that has been imposed to the Kenyan exports by United States of America. Madam Speaker, we all agree very much that tea, coffee, the horticulture, textile, but especially tea and coffee are the highest economic horticultural products that we have in this country. And the increase of these tariffs, Madam Speaker, definitely then will impact negatively as far as the revenues for these two products are concerned. I hope and believe that the committee that has been assigned this particular discussion will be able to look into this so that we do not really water down the efforts of our farmers in the tea sector and the coffee sector. Madam Speaker, allow me to touch also on Senator Onyonka's statement in regards to the kidney transplants in this Medihill Hospital. Madam Speaker, Medihill, from where I sit, where I've passed by and seen how it looks very classy, it looks very nice, a good hospital, well maintained and all that. So of course, Madam Speaker, the expectation is that the standards and the administration services are up to as what you see, as what your eyes see. But Madam Speaker, what we've seen of late, the documentary that we saw, it's completely out of this world, Madam Speaker. You know, the other day, last year, I think last year, yes, when we had the issue of Shakahola, The discussion came was it issues, a business of organ sale or operations in terms of these organs being removed from Kenyans and sold out there? A lot of discussions, went round. Now, with this issue that has been highlighted from such a hospital, it's very sad, Madam Speaker, and I want to request the relevant ministry, which is the Ministry of Health. It has a new ministry. I believe Dwale will be able to perform, will be able to deliver. He's been assigned different ministries, and we've seen him streamlining these ministries. Madam Speaker, at times you don't have to be a doctor to serve in this particular Ministry of Health. Leadership takes the lead. And we believe in his leadership that he's going to ensure such unscrupulous business people putting up hospitals for such kind of money-making businesses, this should stop, Madam Speaker. Lastly, is also on the issue of teachers that I'm told it's also the statement for Senator Onyonka in regards to the recent promotions that have been unfair. Madam Speaker, where you sit, you and me and everyone, we've come from the education system. I mean, we are here because we started, our teachers really.
30 seconds, Senator.
Oh, thank you, Madam Speaker. So our teachers, for Christ's sake, Madam Speaker, they deserve good promotions. They deserve fair promotions, Madam Speaker. Everyone has passed through the education system. So it is fair. You can imagine today I sit here as a senator, and the teacher who taught me in that lower level today, they've never even, for example, gotten their fair share of promotion. It's quite very much unfair. So it is fair that the CEO, TSC, and the relevant bodies concerned in terms of, in regards to these promotions, they offer it fairly to the teachers who go out of their way to ensure that learning is to the standard that is required. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The last speaker will be Senator Eddy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Cherargei has brought to this house a very important statement, Madam Speaker. And this statement, Madam Speaker, perhaps has skipped the lawmakers in Kenya. This statement, Madam Speaker, is to the Standing Committee of Trade, Industrialization and Tourism on a matter of national concern regarding the impact of the 10% tariff imposed on Kenyan exports by the United States of America, Madam Speaker. This tariff, Madam Speaker, is generally to affect the sectors of tea, coffee, horticulture, textile, and other sectors that are largely contributing to Kenyan exports, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I don't know why this is not a matter of substantive motion in this house. In fact, I wanted to wish Senator Cherargei the courage to bring this as a matter of national importance and a motion that this house must converse on. And Madam Speaker, if possible, go ahead and even make resolutions, Madam Speaker. Because this is one of those statements of Madam Speaker that is critically indicting our policy, our foreign policy angle, Madam Speaker. Simply put, the United States has put tax on our commodities, Madam Speaker. Tax that is going to increasingly affect producers locally here, Madam Speaker, who, as we speak, Madam Speaker, experience a swath of violence, a swath of economic disruption, a swath of business disruption in the wake of the Gen Z movement last year, Madam Speaker, that was agitated by the issue of high taxation in Kenya, Madam Speaker. The tax levels that our people here are facing, Madam Speaker, is already so high that if you have tariffs being imposed on these particular areas, Madam Speaker, and unfortunately so, they come in the helm of the backdrop of this economy, which is agricultural products, Madam Speaker. If you look at the issue of tea, a key agricultural product, Madam Speaker. If you look at the issue of coffee, a key agricultural product, Madam Speaker. If you look at the issue of horticulture, a key agricultural product, Madam Speaker. If you look at the issue of textile, which we're even trying to struggle to even renew and regenerate our granaries, Madam Speaker, it is not possible to continue normal production in this country, Madam Speaker, where this issue is potentially going to lead to serious high cost of production. And Madam Speaker, we know, time without number, that where this kind of tariffs have been put on goods such as this, Madam Speaker, it directly only leads to the producers of these particular commodities pushing that cost to consumers, Madam Speaker. What does that mean? It means that Kenyans who are already extremely taxed will now also face serious consumer prices rising to them on the basic goods and services that they provide to these companies, Madam Speaker. So my urge, Madam Speaker, is that the moment the United States chose to impose 10% taxation on these commodities, Madam Speaker, it should have, and we have an opportunity, Madam Speaker, actually in both houses, it should be a matter of substantive motion that we must discuss, and it must inform also our foreign policy on how we want to engage with the United States, Madam Speaker. Do you want to review our lack of tariffs thereof in a number of commodities in the United States, Madam Speaker, so that we respond with the same, or do you want to negotiate it on the backdrop of a sober foreign policy, Madam Speaker? So while I support this statement and is going to go to the relevant committee, I want to urge this House to pay attention to it, that further from that committee, this statement should be brought back as a substantive motion that we can canvass on it and come with a position of the Senate that can be sent to the President so that he can be able to see how he engages his counterpart in the United States. So therefore, thank you, Senator Cherargei, as I support this statement.
Honorable Senators, we will defer the orders 8 to 13, and we'll move on to the next order, please. Clerk.
Order number 14, the Sports Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 33 of 2024, second reading, resumption of debate.
Senator Okech, you had a balance of 15 minutes to go on this bill.
Madam Speaker, yesterday I was interrupted by the issue of quorum by the good senator or aspiring senator from from Khalwale, Madam Speaker, who was trying to catch probably his flight, being a Sky Team member. And Madam Speaker, I'm glad that today his flight is not being interfered with and is around, and he looks very excited to contribute more.
Senator, please focus on
On a lighter note, Madam Speaker. But Madam Speaker, this is a very fantastic bill that has been pushed forward by the great senator of Nairobi. And just to recap, that the senator of Nairobi is working hard around the clock to make sure that we can be able to have our counties, from the money that they receive, just 1% of that money be dedicated to a sports fund within the counties, so that, Madam Speaker, those organizations within sports, organizations that are established to have been registered, whether individually or as a group, can then be able to benefit from what we will say some sort of funding by the county government in a predictable way that allows them to be organized and to participate in different platforms of sport, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, as I recap on this, yesterday I did intimate that indeed sporting has been left to grow like one of the seeds upon sowing that grows in among thorns, surviving on its own, Madam Speaker. Because if you cast your eye upon our sporting activities in this country, Madam Speaker, sport thrives in three ways, Madam Speaker. One is organically through community organized organizations that then support some form of sport here and there. And then the second way, Madam Speaker, is that sport thrives within our schooling systems, be it primary and secondary, and then to the university level. And Madam Speaker, you will notice that the higher level of education you go, the more the sports start dwindling. And that is because the investment in terms of both management, funding of it, infrastructural support of it, and even more broadly, professionalization of sport becomes a problem. So that means that there is nothing as devolved by the DNA of our own country in terms of our own organization as sports. But the problem that has been, Madam Speaker, is that we have not seen the commercial viability, the business case for sports in our country, to the extent that we have left this local organization of sports to just take an organic format. And this is one of those ways to make sure that you can be able to enable sports to thrive as a case that is an economically viable mode of belonging in our country, Madam Speaker, that in some ways can even try and uptake a swath of young people who do not have economic opportunity in this country, Madam Speaker. What do I mean by this, Madam Speaker? If you are to have a bird's eye view position on the issue of sports in our country, Madam Speaker, you'll realize that actually the most popular sports are the ones that get a bit of attention. Not enough attention to make them thrive, but just a bit of attention. For instance, Madam Speaker, athletics in this country. I say it gets a bit of attention because there is no proper investment in the infrastructure that is needed to support grassroots organization of athletes to the extent that they can grow to national level. Then you come to the second one that becomes soccer, that everybody in this country will agree, Madam Speaker, that if you cast your eye upon what brings us together, even among communities, of course, thumbs up to Gor Mahia, thumbs up to FC Leopard, thumbs up to Police FC, thumbs up to Badara United, and all the teams that form our Premier League, Madam Speaker. But if you cast your eye upon these teams, Madam Speaker, you realize that that is where there is some form of semblance to organization in the sports investment, Madam Speaker, in this country. But if you look at other sports, Madam Speaker, that even can involve other gender, especially the women gender who are sometimes excluded from some of these physically hard sports like soccer, there is no attention to this, Madam Speaker. So allowing this fund to take root in our grassroots communities, Madam Speaker, is the beginning of organizing sports. It is the beginning of investing in sports management. It's the beginning of actually ensuring that we got a paradigm shift in the way we invest in sport. Because currently, Madam Speaker, when young people in Narok County want to go and play soccer during their camps when they're in holidays, all they need to do, and the only way they see they can be able to actually go and have their sports time and be able to enjoy the game while also building their professional capacities, is to call Senator Ledamo Lekina and tell Senator Ledamo Lekina that we are going for a sports activity. Our budget is 100,000. Please help us out. And then if they are in Nandi, it's even worse. Because in Nandi, what the characters I've seen is that I have sat with Senator Cherargei. They call them, the Senator Cherargei, to pay for referees who are going to referee these matches. It's even worse in Nairobi, where we should have better sporting academies, because my sister, Senator Mutinda, who is a nominated member, sometimes when her pockets run dry, she reaches out to me and tells me that there are young girls who want to go and play netball, but they cannot be able to access some field where they can go and play this netball. So that I have to dig in my pocket and be a charitable donor to my wonderful senator to support her, to make sure that people can access even just field for sport, Madam Speaker. So it is important that we invest in this sporting activity so that Senator Mutinda does not need to suffer to take money from her pocket to go and pay for a field for the young ladies in Nairobi who relate with us so well, or in Kayole, or in Dandora, can suffer, Madam Speaker. In some extent, Madam Speaker, even in Migori County, it goes worse. Young people have organized themselves so well from Rongo, from Nyatike, from Kuria. They have their tournament in the farthest end of the county, and then they want to call Eddie Okech, their senator, that Senator Eddie, can you even help us just get water and some bread to go and survive on, Madam Speaker? Yet, if you go to our counties today, Madam Speaker, you'll find a governor going with a convoy of 10 vehicles to go and launch a project of 200,000, Madam Speaker. This is a very important bill, Madam Speaker, that will ensure that our organization at the grassroots level makes sure that community programs, clubs, locally organized organizations, and even to some extent, volunteer networks that are organizing our clubbing activities in the grassroots can be able to have at least a jump start to make sure that when they're thinking about their sporting activities, they can be able to go far. Madam Speaker, the only thing that I didn't see here is that Senator Sifuna, in his wisdom, did indicate here that the key sporting activities that you would want to see hugely invested on in these grassroots communities include football, swimming, basketball, netball, and volleyball. I wanted to invite Senator Sifuna in the amendment opportunity that we might have in the different committees that we'll have in this House, Madam Speaker, to think diversification and also to think pride, that let us first of all invest in areas that have brought us serious pride, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, one of the reasons why when I go to the United States or when I go to Europe, I get to be proud to be Kenyan is because of the first feat of a lady called Faith Kipyegon. And Madam Speaker, currently I'm mentoring a young girl from Migori County who has for the first time made it to the Olympic, running the 800-meter category, called Lilian Odira. Madam Speaker, you might remember that Lilian Odira last year in the qualification tests for runners in this country, she actually did defeat Mora, who has been a champion at all over the world stage, Madam Speaker. So we cannot exclude athletics from this funding at the grassroots level. We must give athletics the opportunity, just like we will give football, just like we'll give swimming, just like we'll give basketball, just like we'll give netball, and just like you'll give volleyball, Madam Speaker. But even more adventurous, Madam Speaker, if you are an enthusiast of sporting activities and you are keen to watch things like the Olympic, Madam Speaker, you realize that in the Olympics, Madam Speaker, there are a lot of sporting activities that some of them, you wonder that, why wouldn't my son or my daughter in Kenya, if I am a Kenyan, cannot participate in them, Madam Speaker? For instance, Madam Speaker, we have seen in America a number of young kids going for gymnastics as a major sport that brings glory and honor to the United States. And they compete with their counterparts from Russia, from China, from Japan. Madam Speaker, these are sports that if you are to put people from Tarakaniti, where my friend Senator Gataya Mofaya comes from, you will have very good gymnastics, Madam Speaker, who can compete at the global stage. But we don't give them priority because we don't see them as sports, Madam Speaker. If you think about sports like synchronized swimming, Madam Speaker, if you come from the lake where I come from, or from where Senator Faki comes from, in the Indian Ocean, Madam Speaker. In the Indian Ocean, when you go there, Madam Speaker, you realize that even Chimera, Senator Chimera, the kind of swimming that this gentleman does in snow, they call it snorkeling. They do a lot of snorkeling, Madam Speaker, and they go and swim with the dolphins right in Wasini Island. And this is an opportunity where they can be able to get, when you think about sporting in a broad capacity, that we see a lot of those diversified sporting opportunities in Olympics, that I think that people in Kenya have got more than talent enough to go and participate at a global level. So I want to evoke the spirit of Ajua in Migori County, that Ajua can be a sport, Madam Speaker. This is what we call Mankala sport. It can be a sport that we showcase not just locally in Migori County, but all the way nationally, Madam Speaker. All the sporting activities that we are seeing being done at the Olympic levels, Madam Speaker, let encourage our counties that when this fund being supported by Senator Sifuna comes to law, we must see investment in those areas, Madam Speaker. Lastly, Madam Speaker, because I want to give time to my colleagues who also contribute in this wonderful bill, is that there is a conversation, Madam Speaker, that I've seen the Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga bringing around devolution, Madam Speaker. And one thing that I've learned, Madam Speaker, is that there are two concurrent bills that have come to this house. The bill for period poverty and the bill for sports now. And you realize that where these things happen to the maximum is in primary schools, more fundamentally, and high school to some extent, Madam Speaker. Isn't it the right time, Madam Speaker, for us to start thinking about devolving primary education, devolving secondary education, and to some extent, devolving the entire education so that counties can be given the power to deal with the immediate manifestation of the problems that are related with upbringing of our children at the schooling level. Because when you leave them largely for the national government, they collapse. Sporting is collapsing when the best place to build sporting capacities, Madam Speaker, is in high school and in primary schools, Madam Speaker, where age hasn't caught up with the number of people that they can be able to nurture these sports. So there's going to be a contradiction, Madam Speaker, where you have put a fund to support sports in counties, yet some of the hubs that they must be able to put that financing is in primary school and is in high school, which is not devolved, Madam Speaker. So I wanted to encourage that this conversation about sports and the bill that was brought by my sister, Senator Ruoba, I should invoke in us the spirit of wishing for more devolved functions that are relevant to the upbringing and to the best well-being of our people, like education. With that, Madam Speaker, I appreciate Senator Sifuna, and I support this bill in totality with amendments in the areas that I have tried to cast some thoughts on. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Ledama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this bill, the amendment to the Sports Act. As I do so, Madam Speaker, I'm a firm believer that for us to be able to get any sort of progress, we must consult county governments. We are the house that protects devolution. We are the house that fights for more resources to go to counties. And I was agonizing on how these funds can be set aside, knowing very well that the Constitution is quite clear when it comes to the issues of a share of revenue that is set aside for the county governments. Last year, we passed the FIA fund, which is the Facility Improvement Fund. And when we did that, it colluded with other funds that exist in counties. Now, as I support this fund, I'm alive to the fact that county assemblies determine what sort of funds to set up. And once they do, you'll find that a lot of counties have got so many funds that exist. In fact, one of the biggest problems we've been having is how do we collapse all these funds? And we talk about the funds which are set up, which are approved under Section 116 of the PFM Act. They are time-bound. You know, funds will be for up to 10 years. This is a very noble idea that Senator Sifuna has brought, but we have to think thoroughly on how we are going to be able to make sure we implement it. Counties are suffering. The money that we are setting aside, we are sending to counties. If we send 1%, hypothetically, of the money that is being sent to Narrow County to promote sports, it will be difficult for the county to be able to carry out other activities. I'm a firm believer that we should not be reducing the money that we're already sending out to counties or forcing county governments to be able to set aside up 1% of their resources. I think what we need to do is to look at the additional allocation funds, the funds from the national government, the funds from the consolidated fund. I want to persuade my brother, Senator Sifuna, for us to find a way to amend this law and not require counties to set aside 1% of the little money that we are sending to them, but we see how we can be able to get 1% from the consolidated fund. Because when we do that, we'll be sending more money to our counties. I know how painful it is for young men who are trying to build their talent to be able to call their senators and say, we need some money. I know how painful it is when we have sports in our counties which are not funded. They are not funded by the private sector, they are not funded by the counties. And in the wisdom of the county assemblies, when they are agonizing on how to budget the small resources they have, they decide that sports can take, it may not be, it may not be a necessity. So I'm agonizing on where this 1% of resources is going to come from. Because when you look at the Constitution, a share of revenue of county government raised by the national government is sent directly and it's budgeted. When you look at Section 109 of the PFM Act, which is still, I think, Article 207, it talks about how that money should be sent. And then 116 of the PFM Act discusses about how fund can be set up. When we set up the FII fund, we already created a conflict, because when you look at the PFM Act sets up the treasurer of the county assembly or the CC finance as a person in charge of all the resources. He's the one who has got the fiduciary responsibility. He's the AIE holder. But then now on the FII fund, we introduce a new concept where the CC in charge of health or the CEO in charge of health now dictates how that money is going to be spent. We need to be very careful on how we develop this fund. I fully support this, but I think I would like to request Senator Sifuna to look at it and amend 554B, where he said there shall be paid into the county sports association fund 1% of all money is paid into the county revenue fund. I think I have a problem with that. What we need to do, given the fact that this is a piece of legislation that has got to go to both houses of parliament, I think we need to widen it up and request a particular percentage to look at how much we need from the consolidated fund so that we can be able to make this thing actually, proactive, and also to make sure that it can actually happen. Madam Speaker, I've gone across Nairobi County, and I'm quite impressed by the private sector, the role the private sector has played in setting up fields where people can be able to go and build their talent. I hope that when we are talking about this fund, whoever is going to fund it or however it's going to be funded, we can then be able to clearly indicate how many fields should be set up. Because if this 1%, for instance, Nairobi County gets about 20 billion. 1% of 20 billion is what? 200 million? Okay? Narrow County gets about 10 billion. 1% of the population in Nairobi is about what? 7 million? Would 200 million proportionally be enough to support sporting activities in Nairobi? No. You know, maybe 100 million might be enough to support a population of 1.5 million in Narok, but in Nairobi it will not. So I'm of the idea that we try and get resources from the consolidated fund. And I wish that my brother, Senator Sifuna, will look for a champion in the lower house so that they can be able to discuss. And particularly now when we're going through the budget making process, we can then be able to set that money aside. Right now is when you need a road from somewhere, you know the budget committee, you can go discuss and say, we need a road here. You know, we just need to be able to negotiate. It's important. I like the fact that the bill is proposing a situation whereby we recognize registered county sports associations. I think it's important that each one of us here as senators really try to understand what associations are there and what support do they have. Can we talk to the private sector as well? Because government may not be able to do everything with the little resources that we have. Today, we're talking about borrowing from the World Bank about 100 billion shillings. And of course, the World Bank has got their own stringent measures. They want us to pass legislation that will not be that will be, uncomfortable to most of us. So it makes it very difficult. So I think what we need to do is to figure out how do we tap in, how do we encourage CSR from all those entities that are working, all those businesses that are doing business in our counties, and try to see whether even 1%, if we could include a particular amount, maybe that 1% could be added in the fees for licenses. Some people might say it's over taxation, but we have to be creative enough, because the money that we are sending from Nairobi, the money that we are sending from the national government is not enough to support these counties. I just want us to be a bit creative. Madam Speaker, it is imperative that we become creative. And the reason why I'm saying we must be creative is because earlier on, we were discussing about the tariffs, which are imposed by the current president of the United States of America, Donald Trump. And for me, I see that as an opportunity. I actually say thank you, because it's about time that we realign our own existing resources to build our economies. This issue of relying on the West so much and lamenting and saying it's going to have a big impact on us, I see it as an opportunity. We have a lot of resources. Those resources are exploited by foreign entities. Suppose we look back and we say, how is our mining sector? Can we get some money from the mining sector? I want Senator Sifuna to be creative in this bill and look at areas where there are royalties which are paid. Those royalties are never paid to the local community. You'll find that there are individuals who go in and collude with those so-called investors, miners. And when the money which is supposed to go to the community comes in, it goes into private pockets. It is happening in Narok, where you find some leaders, former leaders and current leaders, and people who are connected in the community will go to bed with foreigners, with miners, and collect the resources in millions. In fact, I know one. There's a company called Kilimapesa. And right now we are fighting so hard to ensure that the money which is supposed to be paid to the residents of Kilgoris, of Lolgorian constituency award, that money does not go into private pockets. There's a danger that that money might go into a few people. They consider themselves committee. They are given like maybe 100 million, they pocket it, and they split it among themselves. We need to be creative, Madam Speaker. I want Senator Sifuna to look at this thing. It is not like something that it is, we can have one solution for the 47 counties. Let us look at Narok. Let us look at Taita Taveta. Taita Taveta has got a lot of minerals. Can we work with these state departments and figure out, when we have a picture of Kenya, what resources are coming out from Kenya? How do we make sure that we tap those resources to be able to build our talent, to be able to help us? Because the more youth practice, even us, the more we go out there and exercise, we live a better life. So we need these resources. We just need to be able to think outside the box. We need to be able to extend our sort of like eye to where every single penny is coming from. Go to Samburu County, Madam Speaker. When you go to Samburu County, there's a lot of mining activities happening in Samburu County. Who is benefiting? Not the Samburu people, but the people who come in there, who team up with some people in Nairobi. Go to Migori County. The amount of gold which is coming out of there, Migori residents are not benefiting. We just need to be, a little bit creative on how we fund this proposed sports association fund. I think, Madam Speaker, if we become creative and we extend the areas of sourcing funds, what Senator Sifuna is proposing will become something which can be actionable. But relying on the money, on the shareable revenue, we may not be able to succeed. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Chimera.
Asante sana Spika kwa fursa hii. Spika, kwanza nimpongeze Senator Edwin Sifuna kwa mswada wake huu. Huu ni mswada wa maana sana kwa wale vijana wetu ambao wanajihusisha mara mingi katika nyanja hii ya michezo, wale wakimbiaji kutoka kaunti ya Nandi ambapo Senator Cheragea anatokea, ambapo pia ni mashemeji zangu kule Nandi, wachezaji mpira kutoka kaunti mbalimbali, wakimbiaji, wale wanaocheza michezo ambayo inasemekana kwa kizungu indoor games. Speaker, niseme wazi kwamba kumekuwa na changamoto kubwa sana kwa wachezaji wetu kufanya michezo kwa sababu ya ufadhili. Utapata timu nyingi hususan za mipira ambazo zinacheza mpira nyanjani kule, sehemu zile za mashinani sana, wazungu huita rural areas, Speaker. Wana changamoto si haba ya fedha, Speaker. Utapata kuna timu ambayo inafaa kusafiri pengine kwenda kuchezea mechi ya kirafiki pengine kaunti ya mbali, kwa mfano kutoka Kilifi, na wanafaa kwenda Nyanza kwa mfano kucheza mchezo ule, Speaker, na hawana ufadhili. Nafikiri mapendekezo yale ya Senator Edwin Sifuna ya kwamba wachezaji wote hawa wajiweze kujisajili katika makundi tofauti tofauti ili waweze kupata mfumo wa fedha kutoka kwa serikali ni jambo la maana sana, Speaker. Na najua senator kutoka kaunti ya Narok, naona leo amepewa jina lingine kwamba yeye ni simba. Sijui ni simba jike ama ni simba la dume au ni simba jike, na taarifiwa ni simba jike. Kunradhi, Speaker. Kunradhi, Speaker. Naomba nitoe hiyo, Speaker.
Order, Senator Chimera. Can you withdraw that?
Nimetoa na nimeomba msamaha, Speaker. Niseme kwamba yale makundi yote ambayo yatapata fedha hii, Senator Ledama amekuwa na wasiwasi kwamba ni kwa nini tunatoa fedha hii 1% kwa ule mgao ambao unakwenda moja kwa moja kwa kaunti zetu, na yeye akawa anapendekeza kwamba tuweze kufikiria njia mbadala za kuongeza kitita hichi. Nakubaliana na mawazo yale, lakini nimwambie kwamba lazima tuanzie mahali fulani, kwa sababu tunaona ile kero ambayo vijana wetu wamepitia. Mimi leo hii, Speaker, kuna timu pale kaunti ya Kwale, timu inajiita SS Asad, Speaker. Timu hii inashiriki katika mechi ama katika mchuano ile ya ligi kuu ya kitaifa, Speaker. Nafikiri kama daraja la pili ama la kwanza, Speaker. Na timu ile inafaa kusafiri kutoka Kwale, nafikiri takriban kila weekend kwenda pengine maeneo ya nchi zingine ya kaunti tofauti tofauti. Watakuwa pengine wana michezo Migori, wana michezo Kisumu, na timu ile imepata shida sana kupata ufadhili, Speaker. Na serikali ya kaunti ya Kwale imejaribu kuipatia ufadhili, lakini ufadhili ule, Speaker, haujatosheleza timu ile. Na mimi kila weekend, Speaker, mimi hupata maombi kutoka kwa maafisa wa klabu ile wakiniomba kwamba kama kiongozi wa kisiasa, kama kijana kutoka kaunti ya Kwale, kama mtu ambaye ninapenda michezo, maana pia mimi ni mchezaji, Speaker. Ninachezea timu ya Bunge FC hapa, tukiongozwa na naibu captain wetu Mheshimiwa Senator Aaron Cheriot, na nimewahi kucheza michezo tangu nikiwa kijana mdogo. Nafikiri timu yangu ilikuwa inaitwa Manchester United pale Maramuni Jeza A, Speaker. Na inakuwa ni lazima nichange kila weekendi ili kuweza kuhakikisha kwamba angalau timu ile imepata usafiri. Vile vile kuna timu inajiita Samburu Lions, Speaker. Timu shwari kabisa, timu ambayo imejaza talanta kedekede pale, lakini wanashindwa kuendelea katika michezo hiyo kwa sababu hawana ufadhili, Speaker. Nina imani kupitia sheria hii ya Mheshimiwa Senator Edwin Sifuna, timu zile mbili nimezitaja na zinginezo, na wale wana michezo wa aina tofauti tofauti wataweza kupata ufadhili ili waweze kuendelea kuonyesha talanta yao, Speaker. Na mwisho wa siku nina imani pengine talanta ile itaweza kugeuka na kuwa ajira, Speaker. Speaker, vile vile pia nizungumze tu kwa wale ambao watapewa majukumu ya kuchunga fedha hii ambayo inakuja kwa yale makundi ya kaunti ya michezo, ama ukipenda kwa lugha ya Kimombo County Sports Associations, Speaker, kwamba niwape ilani kwamba fedha hii si ya kutumiwa vibaya, fedha hii si ya kufujwa, fedha hii ipo kuhakikisha kwamba wale vijana wetu ambao tunawapenda, ambao tunawaenzi, ambao tumekuwa tukiwapatia support aidha kupitia vifaa vya michezo, kupitia pesa taslim, waweze kupata fursa ya kushiriki katika michezo yao kikamilifu, Bispika. Na vile vile pia niweze kuzungumza kwa serikali zetu za ugatuzi. Ninajua 1% hii ni nyingi kwenu, na ninafahamu kwamba mnafaa kupeana huduma mbalimbali, huduma ya afya, pengine kusambaza maji, kilimo bora, lakini vile vile pia hawa vijana wetu wanahitaji usaidizi, wanahitaji ufadhili. Ile pesa ikikufikia pale Wizara ya Michezo katika kaunti zetu, mimi naomba magavana wetu, mawaziri wetu wa fedha na mawaziri wetu wa michezo nyanjani wawe haraka, wawe wepesi zaidi kuhakikisha kwamba fedha ile imefikishwa kwa makundi yetu yale ya vijana ya michezo pasipo na utepetevu wowote wa kazi wala kucheleweshwa, Bispika, ndio ili tuweze kuona matunda ya fedha ile. Na Bispika, ninajua hivi punde pengine nikipata fursa hata mimi nitaweza kuchangia katika mswada wangu ambao pia tumeweza kusukuma na Seneta Profesa Tom Ojienda wa michezo vile vile. Na nina imani kwamba kupitia sheria zote hizi za michezo, lengo letu ni moja tu, tunapania kuhakikisha kwamba tumeboresha nafasi ya kijana ambaye ana talanta katika michezo. Huyu kijana apate fursa, aweze kuonekana, aweze kutambulika, ili talanta yake iweze kumpatia angalau ajira. Ndio sisi viongozi, na nilani kwa viongozi wenzangu, tuache kutumia hawa vijana vibaya kufanya siasa, kuwatumia kama magenge ya kigaidi kwa siasa zetu. Wakiweza kupata ajira yao kupitia talanta hii, Bispika, itakuwa ni jambo la kufurahisha sana. Kwa hayo mengi ya machache, Bispika, mimi naunga mkono mswada huu na naomba tuweze kusukuma kwa haraka iwezekanavyo uweze kupita, angalau hata mimi wikendi 3-4 zijazo niweze kupumzika kwa michango ya hivi vilabu ambavyo vinafaa kusafiri, Bispika. Asante sana, Bispika.
Senator Khalwale.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, allow me to congratulate Senator Edwin Sifuna for this industry. Madam Speaker, I can't concentrate because of the lamentations from Senator Kiregei and Mungatana. Please remind them that under our standing orders, practices and protocols, I'm in leadership.
Senators, please allow Senator Khalwale to proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the protection. I wanted to applaud Senator Edwin Sifuna for this good industry, and I'll quickly want to urge him to realize that this thing is bigger than he thinks. Yes, it is his brainchild, but he needs to bring many more players on board so that we can make this law more comprehensive. Very quickly, in establishment of the County Sports Association Fund, for example, he has mentioned how the sources of the fund. We can quickly agree with him with A, B, and C, but also help him to also realize that we can make money from, source that money from gate collections at the various stadia. We can also make money from hiring out the various stadia. Would want to add, Madam Speaker, that we want to demand in this law that we get money directly from the exchequer. Why do I insist that it is noble for us to ask for money from the exchequer? It is because in our budget, we give up to 13% of our budget, Madam Speaker, we put into agriculture. Why? Because there will be returns. Now, viewed as an industry, the economy of sports can generate so much money into our revenue collection. And therefore, I dare say that we should
Order,
not.
Senator Mutinda, please don't. Sorry, Senator Kavindu, please don't speak on phone loudly. Apologies, Senator Mutinda.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That we should pump up to 10% from the exchequer of our budget into the sports. And let nobody be surprised with what I'm saying. Because if we can spend the billions of shillings that we pump into political parties, why can we not spend 10% of our budget on sports? And for you to realize how great the returns are from investment into sports, let me just walk you through about what happens in football. Madam Speaker, if you go to the English Premier League, the English Premier League is an 11.84 billion euro economy. That is the equivalent of 235 billion Kenya shillings. And all they do is to kick a ball. But in our case, they'll kick a ball, they will run to be the famous champions of Eldoret. And what's more, Madam Speaker, if we invest, our sports will not just be limited to football and athletics, but I'm slowly waking up the country to the potential of investing in bullfighting. Madam Speaker, because Mamba doesn't believe in this, I want to bring it to the attention of the House that in Spain, bullfighting is not a joke. In Spain, and I had the privilege, Madam Speaker, to be sponsored by President Mwai Kibaki to go to Spain, where he allowed me to carry five bullfighters. We went there and visited the stadia and how they organize their bullfighting, and they mint billions of shillings from bullfighting. A day will a day will come when bullfighting of Marinya, when bullfighting of Ikolomani, when bullfighting of Isoga, Malaba and Butoto will be a major income earner to the economy of this country. I tell you. Madam Speaker, having said that, allow me to pay a tribute to President Mwai Kibaki. I've already said he sponsored me and fellow bullfighters to Madrid. But not just that. In 2008, Mwai Kibaki came up with Vision 2030. And inside Vision 2030, yes, he had the pillar on the economy, he had the pillar on political stabilization of the country, but he also had the pillar on the social issues and the sports. That's how Kibaki, after realizing what bullfighting would do in the social pillar, he was able to put money into us to go and learn something. Courtesy of that investment, I was able to kickstart the construction of a stadium in Malinya. That stadium has stalled, but I know, God willing, once I become the governor of Kakamega, I am going to complete Malinya Stadium. And every time we have a bullfighting event, Madam Speaker, Nissans will be arriving in Malinya, and each tourist will be paying $100. $100, only $100. A Nissan can carry up to around 14 people. So at $100, one Nissan, we shall be netting $1,400. To fill that stadium, we shall be needing in excess of almost 50 Nissans. You cannot imagine the multiplier effect of that industry, I believe. Madam Speaker, Kibaki wanted to quickly transform Kenya into a middle income country by the year 2030. And as adequately articulated by Senator Osotsi, when the Jubilee government took over from Mwai Kibaki, they went and found inside the sports fund billions of shillings, and they started salivating for those billions, and that's how the stadia that Kibaki had wanted to grow from this initiative came to note. I cannot, Madam Speaker, commend by paying tribute to President Kibaki and forget about a young man from my backyard by the name of Honorable Ababu Namwamba. Not many people know that Ababu was a square peg in a square hole in that ministry. Ababu was a symbol of success when he was Minister for Sports. It is under Ababu that the ban on FKF by FIFA was lifted. That is how Kenya came back into competing in soccer. It is during Ababu's time, Madam Speaker, that the soccer events that now have been reinvigorated in our secondary schools came up. Today, if you go to our secondary schools, the soccer that used to be in Green Commandos, Kakamega High School, the Scorpions of Musingo High School, the champions of Kisii High School, the champions of Kisumu Boys are back. They are now competing thanks to efforts by Ababu. I want to celebrate Ababu because Ababu, the Talanda Sports City in Ngong, was his brainchild. And when you go there, the construction which was ongoing, I wonder how was the decision made to remove Ababu, who was performing, and then bring there people like the way I saw, he's called Ruku. I saw a guy called Ruku being interviewed to become minister. The guy struggled. Then they put there another lady, Madam Speaker, called Jeptumo, with due respect, wife of our colleague, but she's not material for minister. You saw the minister who is going to be in charge of gender, telling the whole country which cared to listen that the reason why our young girls die in Airbnbs is because they're hungry for money. Madam Speaker, you'll have your space. You'll challenge
What's your
me.
point of orders,
You'll challenge
Senator
me.
Professor Kamar? Please sit down, Senator Khalwale.
Madam Speaker, did you hear the honorable member tell us that an unqualified person, I don't even want to mention names, has been elevated to be minister? Which criteria does the honorable Khalwale have for appointment of ministers, which we don't have in this house?
Senator Khalwale, unless you're
Ma-
able to
Madam
demonstrate
Speaker,
that
because of the respect I have for Prof,
you will withdraw.
I wish she had told me what she wanted me to do. She has not told me, but because of the
Senator.
respect I have for her, all I meant, Prof, and I'm a very serious debater, is that
Senator Khalwale. Senator Professor Kamar, you want to clarify what you said?
Yeah, by saying if he does not have a criteria that is laid out that somebody has, that the National Assembly has failed to use, then he should really withdraw that. It should not be now answered.
Senator Khalwale, you need to demonstrate that the criteria applicable to a minister was not met by the National Assembly, or withdraw what you said.
thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm surprised that a teacher of a university can fail to remember that the highest standard
Senator
of
Khalwale,
appointing ministers, I'm now expanding,
no,
of
no,
appointing,
Senator Khalwale, you just want to explain how the two ministers, and you made reference to two ministers, failed to meet the qualification standard set, that is required of ministers.
okay, let me prove it this way. Madam Speaker, the standard of a minister under the new constitution is specified. They are not only appointed by the president, but they are supposed to undergo rigorous vetting. It is because of what Kenyans saw during the rigorous vetting that we realized
Senator
they failed.
Khalwale, the allegation is by you, not by Kenyans. Can you please just
Yes,
go
it
to
is,
the
it
point?
is that rigorous vetting which I witnessed that made me get persuaded that they will not perform. You can't pretend. You either have it or you don't have it.
Senator Khalwale, you have not demonstrated that the Senator Khalwale, this is serious.
Yes.
You have not indicated the bar that they did not meet. Please.
Madam Speaker, because I'm discussing about colleagues, I don't want to take it beyond what I've said, but if Prof insists, I'll withdraw. Madam Speaker,
Senator Khalwale, it's not Prof insisting. It is the chair who is asking you to withdraw because you have not demonstrated what I've asked you to demonstrate. Would you kindly withdraw?
Madam Speaker, because the chair is my kid sister, I want to make her very happy by by withdrawing.
Order, Senator Khalwale.
Thank you, Madam.
Senator, the chair is the chair.
You know, I have withdrawn. I withdraw. Madam Speaker, the issue that is very clear in my mind is that if we fall back to Vision 2030 that was envisioned by President Mwai Kibaki in 2030, where development of stadia was a priority, if you care to read it, President Kibaki wanted that in every county today, we would be having a stadia, high quality. And because of the talent that abounds, you can't imagine the latent talent that would untap. Who would have known until recently that lawyers can produce some of the best athletes? The fastest man in Africa today is Ferdinand Kahayanga Omonyala. The fastest man in the world in 800 meters is none other than Wanyonyi from Bungoma. I forgot to say that Ferdinand Omanyala Kahayanga, the grandmother, no. I would love to. The grandmother of Ferdinand is called Mshere Baleya Wakahayanga, who happens to be my elder sister. That is my grand nephew, if there's such a thing. So, Madam Speaker, we want to insist that we give each county a stadia. But for huge counties like Nairobi, because of the population, you give them more stadia. Kakamega the same, Bungoma the same, Mombasa the same, Nakuru the same, Kiambu the same. Madam Speaker, the success of sports lies on how you nurture it from the youth. In Brazil, children join the academies between the ages of 5 and 10. In the UK, they join around about 10, 11 years old. In Kenya, because of the challenge of liquidity, we cannot be able to put up stadia and also put up school football academies fast enough. However, there's a response. We can start by part of this money, Senator for Nairobi, being directed to schools. It is not in doubt where football talent is in Kenya. It is normally very rare to get players from other areas succeeding at the highest level in soccer, but that normally happens very fast for children from Coast, for children from Western, for children from Nyanza, and specifically the Luyas and the Luos. We are the giants of football. Madam Speaker, I would love that we specifically take money to Kakamega High School, Musingo High School, Kisii High School, Kisumu Boys, and Highway Secondary School here in Nairobi. They're the ones who are perpetually winning the national championships for football. Madam Speaker, having said that, there is something which I saw, it started drawing laughter. But I have actually calculated the bullfighting that I was referring to. In Spain, it is a 1.6 billion euro economy in Spain. This is equivalent to 235 billion shillings. And our bullfighting is more sophisticated than the bullfighting of Spain, because the one of Spain, they end up murdering the fighter bull. But in our culture, in our type of sport, the fighter bull is idolized, it is celebrated, it is immortalized. The money that we go to borrow from Europe so as to invest in sports, we don't have to. There is talent there which we need just to grow by minimal investment. As I was telling you, the Champions League, not Champions League, the English Premier League is an 11.84 billion euro shilling. This translates to 2 trillion shillings, Kenya shillings. So at our fingertip right there, we have an answer to how we can fund sports. With those many remarks, I want to celebrate Senator Cherargei, Senator for Nandi. I had the opportunity, Madam Speaker, to confirm that he's a footballer. But he shocked me when I saw him on the board. I didn't know, when I saw his shape, I didn't know it was the player or whether it was the ball. With as many I support.